Welcome to the Tea on Birth. It is your host, Lavandria, me, and I am happy to be back with you guys. Consistency is key, and I'm gonna do it. We're gonna make it. Um, Baby's been sleeping like baby sleep, but I'm here and I'm going to bring it. So, as I talked about in the last podcast, we left off my birth story where um, I done a castor burrito for the second time, and yeah, so that's kind of where I left off. And then I started having contractions like hours later after that, like 4 hours later, I think. So I started having like consistent contractions. I think I tried to maybe go lay down, like just sleep, and then I was like, oh no, this stuff keeps happening. Maybe I'm in labor. That was the thoughts. So I texted my doula. Shout out to doula Jessica O'Wiggins. I love her, the praying doula. I've known her as like a colleague, like as a birth worker friend for a couple years now, and I was honored to have her as my doula. So I texted her and I'm like, hey, I'm kind of timing them. They're pretty close together. That was like what was confusing me. They're pretty close together, like they're 2 or 3 minutes apart, but they're only lasting like 30 seconds. Um, which, if you know, or if you don't know, I'm gonna like pause to educate here. You want your contractions to last a whole minute, and you want them to be like 2 or 3 minutes apart. Really, like the rule is the 5-1-1. So 5 minutes apart, lasting for a minute for a whole hour is when you usually are like, maybe I should notify my birth team and everyone and tell them to come. So it was like, I know it's not that time, but like these are really close together. In my head, I'm like, is this gonna happen all night? Because I've seen birth like that, where their contractions are just like, it wasn't really hard hitting, but they're just back to back. Like they never really like space out. But she like called me and she was like, gave me like a whole list of things to do, which is what your doula does. You call them when you're in labor, and they're like, "This is what you should do," or you think you're in labor, and then they check back in, or you check back in, depending on the doula. So she told me that was normal, and I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Remember, like your contractions are gonna space out. They're gonna space out, and then they're gonna get longer." And I'm like, "Okay." Cool. That's what I need to hear because I am not doing 2 or 3 minutes for like 20 hours. No. So she told me that. She gave me like a laundry list of things to do. She told me to try to eat something, and then go to sleep, of course. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll try to do that. So my goal was like, I added more because I'm a doula. So I'm like, I'm gonna do more. And I did crazy. I'm like, I'm gonna do circles in the ball for like an hour while I eat, and then I'll go lay down or whatever. My husband Ron made me a sandwich, which was super yummy. Well, no, not true. My husband made me a sandwich, and well, it was yummy. Like he made a good sandwich, and I just like I was already kind of towards the point where I wasn't hungry, especially after eating like castor oil stuff and being in the bathroom all day. So he made me the sandwich and I ate it, and well, I didn't really eat it. I took like 3 bites of it, and I was like, what the heck? I don't want this. And these contractions are here. They're here to stay. Like they're not awful, but I just felt like exhausted. But I also like didn't mention, so that day as I did the burritos, I went to my friend's house who has stairs, and I did her stairs. Again, like I'm making a list of things for myself to do as a doula. So I did the stairs, and I would just have like little contractions, like it was like nothing, and then as soon as I stopped, they would go away. But this is like, okay, this is real. So I did some circles on the ball, or was trying to, and I was like, no, I think these are here to stay, and I don't really have to help them be here to stay. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna do what I tell people to do. So I think I had either taken a bath or a shower, and I told her like I did these things and they aren't going away, so I think they're real. But in my head still, I was like, just because I had, again, like I talked about in the last episode, which you should go listen to or watch if you haven't. But I've had, for a while, I've had like cramps that would come and go away. So I was like, oh, this is probably not real. It's probably maybe the castor oil, and then it's gonna go away once it's out of my system. So I lay down, tried to lay down and go to sleep, and I put the TINS unit on. Lifesaver. I was gonna look up what it is, but I don't know. So the TINS unit is, what it does is that it sends like electro like vibrations basically to like your nerves. I'm pretty sure nerves. Yes, your nerves. It's called like electric stimulation, and it just kind of like is like it's kind of like a pain blocker, I guess, but not really. It really helped to not feel like, because I was feeling it in my back more so, like not over the top, like, oh, my back hurts so much, but like my contractions, like what really affected me more was like, oh, my back a little bit. So my husband put them on my back, and I laid down in the bed with my birth pillow, my pregnancy pillow that I love, and I went to sleep. And yeah, that's kind of the story. That's kind of what happened. So I went to sleep. I woke up a couple times to go to the bathroom, but I really slept through most of my early labor, which I know was wild, and I'm still shocked at myself. But the TINS unit helped so much. My husband was in bed, like I think playing his game or whatever, like the PS game. But I would wake up when I had one of that, I'd go back to sleep. But they had started to space out, and then they also they were kind of strong, but they'd like not been as strong, or maybe I just got used to the strong. But so I remember at one point, because he stayed up for a while, I think he was just like, "Is it go time?" I woke up and I was like, "Am I even sleeping? Like, or do I think I'm actually sleeping?" Because I feel like they just like keep coming, but I am sleeping. And he's like, no, you're actually sleeping in between them. I'm like, okay, great, because I need the rest. So I did that all night, and yes, I had the tension on all night. The battery operated one was amazing. Did not run out, and I think I will say, I don't know what time, maybe like 3, 4, I don't know, sometime in the early morning. I did take it off because I was like, I think it's helpful, and then at some point it's not helpful anymore. Because I was like, oh, I feel like this is making it worse now. So I took them off, and I was like, oh, okay, I can just handle it like normal. And so, I don't know, like 5 a.m. I got up to go to the bathroom, which has been like this is my third time like getting up out of the bed to go to the bathroom. I did not, if you're wondering, just in case you're wondering, I did not have diarrhea anymore, really. I was just like peeing, I think, and more semi-solid poop. So the castor oil was like, I don't think I pooped like after that, like it was gone. So I did that, and I got up, I got out of bed. It was dark, whatever, rolled out of bed. And I like walked out of our room. I was in I felt like something weird when I stood up. I stood up and I was like, huh, that feels weird. Maybe like, it's just like more mucus or whatever. And then I got in the hallway, like our room. I got out of the bedroom into the hallway because we had one bathroom then. We didn't have like a bedroom bathroom. And so I was in the hallway, and then I felt like trickles coming out, and I'm like, am I peeing on myself? And I like turned the light on in the hallway, and I like looked down, and then I screamed for my husband. Not like screamed like murder, but I was like, wake up. I was like, babe. He's like, what? I was like, I think my water just broke, because it was clear. It was like a little cloudy, but really just like white, like settlement stuff. Vernix, probably from Vernix, but it was clear. And it wasn't a lot, it was just a little. And so that happened. I'm like, oh man, this is happening. This is real. Like, it is not going away. Birth is happening. That's when it set in for me. I think that like, okay, we're doing this, and I've like made it somewhat far, but also in my head, as a birth worker, you know and you learn. Which now I know, like I still believe it to be true, but I'm not saying it's the end all be all. But in general, when there's cervical change happening, like dilation, as we talked about in the last episode, you'll have like bloody show, which is like mucus that has like tinge of blood in it. That's when you usually know that like cervical change is happening. And I only had like a little bit of mucus like 2 times in the night or whatever, and it had like the tiniest amount of blood like streak in it, and I'm like, so in my head I'm like, my water broke and I'm like 2 centimeters or something. Like nothing's happening. I'm probably nowhere. I'm probably still in early labor, and I'm gonna be in early labor for a long time. So I called the midwife on call. I birthed with Origins midwives, and they don't do home births anymore, but they did at the time, and so they were coming to my house. But I called, and they're also who I apprenticeship with as a student midwife, so it's like super great. I love these women. I'm totally okay with them seeing my naked body and then going back to work with them. Not weird. So I call, and the midwife on call answered, and which is like I told her what you're supposed to tell a midwife. So whenever your water breaks, if you remember coat, it's you tell them the color, the odor, if it had an odor, the amount, like was it a lot, was it a little, and then the time it happened. So I was like, it happened at 5. I'm pretty sure my water broke. It was clear. And I was telling her what was happening earlier, how they were close together, and so she was like, well, why don't you do the mouth circuit, and then try to sleep, you know, if you can. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I don't, and then like at this point, as I called her, like they started like really as soon as my water broke, like I could tell the change, like the difference. I was like, these are different. These are a little more intense than before. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. So the mouth circuit is where you do like side lying, you lay in bed, and either like exaggerate, like put your leg up, like one leg up, the one that you're not laying on, like to your chest, or you like have your husband like hold that leg over the bed and like while you're on like on the edge of the bed. Anyway, so we're on this episode. So I did the shorter version with my husband, and then so you do it on both sides. So I did that like 3-4 times on both sides, and then you do like knee chest, which is kind of like exaggerated child's pose. So you put your chest all the way to the bed and like your butt like pretty much in there, like on your knees or whatever. So I did that, which sucked for a couple contractions, and then I did lunges on both sides for a couple of contractions, and then I was like walking around in our kitchen, and I was like, this is when it's gonna be kind of blurry, because this is when the hormones kicked in, and I'm like, whoa, this is birth. And I was like, fill up the tub. So I told my husband, so I had him fill up the tub, and I was walking around like, oh man. I think at this point my mom called me. Maybe it had been like 2 hours since I broke, or an hour and a half. My mom called me, which is strange because it's like probably 6 in the morning. I'm like, why is she calling me? And she's like, hey, what's going on? I don't even think I had talked to her, told her like I was having any contractions that night. I don't remember. And I was like, well, my water just broke, but you don't have to come over here. And she was like, what? Your water just broke? And I'm like, the midwives aren't even coming. Like, you know, we probably still have some time. I'll let you know. And then Ron was like, the tub's ready. So I got in the tub. I don't think I was in there very long. Maybe like 10 minutes, but like felt like I had 20 contractions or something. But I got in the tub, and the tub was not helping. So this is what also in my head, I'm like, oh gosh, am I a wimp and I just can't handle labor? So I was like, in the tub, and I was trying to really cope, and then my subconscious, because I really wasn't thinking this, it was like my forebrain and real brain was thinking like, girl, you're gonna be labor forever. My subconscious was like, the baby's coming now, the baby's coming. And so my husband's like, oh, okay. But she, like, hands down, I know it's because like we did childbirth education, and then he's also like, we've been together for like 2-3 years. We've been married for a year because we were like together for a year and a half before we got married. So he's known and heard me talk about a bunch of births outside of just childbirth class that we did, which was great, and I recommend everyone to do. And I did that with Jillian, who is amazing. So anyway, I didn't even have to tell him, and I probably wouldn't have even said it, even though I just said that, because I still, in my head, I'm like, I don't know why I said that. The baby's not coming. He's not coming out. I'm gonna be in labor forever. I'm not dilated. I don't even know if I'm in active labor. Like, even though they were probably like a minute to 2 minutes apart at this point, they're like coming close, and they're definitely lasting for a minute. Like the big go all the way up, peak, and then go down for short. So he calls the midwife, and he calls the midwife, I think, and they like listen to me, which is like, if you know any birth worker that's like a great birth worker, they're like, I just need to hear her. Let me hear the woman in labor, and then I can tell you if it's time, like, because like the patterns can be like, they're pretty predictable, but they still can be unpredictable, like especially after multiple babies. So like, a woman could be having them like 5 minutes apart, but they're really strong and hitting, like, so just listening to how they sound, like, as my doula Jessica puts it, is she mooing? If she's mooing, then it's probably time. So he calls, she listens to me, and then I don't even hear the conversation, but as for my husband, he was like, yeah, they said like they're on their way, and then he calls our doula, and she's on her way, and I did not tell him to do anything. The one thing I did say was, go fill up that birth tub, because this is not enough water, and this is not working. So in my head, I'm like, I know if I'm fully submerged, like, if it really, the idea about like a birth tub over your bathtub is that it fully submerges your belly, and if your belly is fully submerged and also your back, like, hydrotherapy, amazing. So I'm like, fill that tub up, I need to be submerged. this is not it. This is not what I want. So yeah, that's really like all of my early labor transitioning to active labor. And no, I had no idea how dilated I was or how low baby was. He had been pretty low, though, like since the beginning, the middle of my like second trimester, he was dropped pretty low. And I knew I was stretchy because of what the midwife said. But so the last thing I heard was that I was 2 to 3 stretchy, like 2 stretchy to 3, and that baby was low. That's all I knew. And that was before any of this labor stuff had started. But in my head still, I'm like, I'm nowhere. I'm probably like 5 centimeters. I'm nowhere. I don't know, because I wasn't checked. So we're at the end of the podcast. But so yeah, so that's all that happened, and it was wild. And I'm really stopping here because tune in next week. But my pushing was like a big chunk of my birth story, and that's gonna take up a lot of time, and then all the other stuff in between, who came, when they came, whoever helped me, how it went down, all the jazz. So yeah, it was like, even talking about it, I'm just remembering like when it got intense. But it was, I mean, I would have another baby. So, but yeah, so that is the part 2 of my birth story. Part 3 will be the last part, and then surprise guest on not part 4, but the podcast after that. Another person who was there that can talk about their experience, which I think would be a great thing, and not hear from these people that talk about birth a lot. So that is the tea on birth, and now I'm just gonna go sit and think about all that again, and probably look at the pictures because they're beautiful pictures. But none of this is picture. Like, I think Ron took all pictures, but mind you, like, no one's there. It's me and my husband and the little baby inside me. Like, no one's there. We're just laboring together, which is how birth should be. Like, most of your labor should be with your person and in your space until you need the professionals, unless you feel like something's wrong. I felt safe, and I created a great environment, and I knew I love this house, and I could birth my baby there. So that is the tea on my early labor, and I'm so happy that you guys tuned in. Feel free to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, and